Hi, it's Mr. Mac here. In this video, we're going to take data, plug it into the calculator, use the calculator to graph that data, and use the calculator to also calculate the least squares regression line. As we can see, we have some data here where we have the height of certain individuals and their weight that goes with them. So right here we can see this person is 68 inches tall and their weight is 181 pounds. We're going to take these two lists of data and we're going to put them into the calculator. So the first thing, go ahead and turn on your calculator. The first thing to do is hit this stat button, and you should get a menu that looks like this. Go ahead and select the edit, and you should have a bunch of lists. It says L1, which stands for list 1, list 2, list 3, and there's more lists if we scroll to the right, but really we only need list 1 and list 2. Now, as you can see, I have data already in my list 1 and list 2. So if that's the case for you, we need to erase that data. You can either hit delete and keep hitting delete until all of your data is gone in that list, or a shortcut is to go up to highlight the entire list, hit clear, and then enter, and that will clear out the whole list. Be careful, if you're going to do it that way, do not hit delete. Don't hit delete, hit clear. So once your lists are cleared out, let's go ahead and let's put our data into the list. So the height is what we're using to predict the weight. We're going to make sure the height is in list 1 and the weight is in list 2. Now, we don't necessarily have to put it in the order they give it to us, but we need to make sure that the 68 and the 181 line up, the 45 and the 88 line up, and so on. We need to make sure that each person lines up their height and weight. So I'm just going to go ahead to make this easy. Go ahead and go in the order I have it. So 68, 45, 60, 52, 57, 71, 70, 66, 52, 58, 63, and 61. Now I'm going to go over to list 2, and I'm going to put the data into there. 181, 88, 130, 103, 121, 177, 205, 154, 111, 123, 157, and 172. Let's go ahead and pause right here and make sure everybody can put this data into their calculator into list 1 and 2, and we'll let people catch up for a moment. Teachers, go ahead and pause it and get everybody caught up before we graph. Okay, now that we have our data into list 1 and list 2, let's go ahead and graph this data and see what it looks like. In order to graph, we need to select this menu right here, which is Stat Plot. And that's gonna give us a menu to figure out what kind of data we want to plot, what kind of graph we want. Now, if we just push this gray button, it goes into the y equals menu, which is where we put in functions. We don't want that menu. We want the stat plot menu, and you notice the stat plot is the same button, but it's blue. And you'll notice all your buttons almost on your calculator have blue above them, a blue function above them. To get to that, you hit second, and now your calculator all the buttons turn into those blue buttons instead. So when I hit second first, you'll notice the cursor, sometimes it's up here, will have a little arrow like this pointing up. And now if you hit it, it goes into the blue button, which in this case was, when I pushed that button, it was the stat plot. First thing you want to do is make sure the stat plot is on. Now we could have multiple plots here if we wanted, but we just want one scatter plot. So I'm going to go into plot number 1. Let's turn it on. And then you can see there's all different types of graphs you can make. You can make a scatter plot, which is what we're going to do. You can make a line plot. You can make a histogram or box plots or whatever you want to do. We just want a scatter plot, and if you notice, by default it already puts in list 1 and list 2, which that's where we have our data. If you had your data into list 3 or 4, that's no problem. You would just hit second and 3, and that would be list 3, or second and 4, that would be list 4. But we have our data in list 1 and list 2, so this is ready to go. Now, if I try to push graph right now, which is over here, I'm not going to do it yet, If I try to push graph, I don't know where my window is and if it's going to even fit all the data that I have. So the calculator has this nice function that will automatically set the window based on your list 1 and list 2. So let's go ahead and push zoom. If you get something like this, hit second quit, then push zoom again, and that will go into your zoom menu. And we're going to go all the way down to number 9. Number 9 says zoom stat. Again, that takes our graph from our statistics and it fits the window so that all of those are perfectly fit in the window, so we can see them all. So if you hit that, it will graph all of our dots for us. So there's our nice little scatter plot. Now you can pick dots if you want instead. If I go back and hit second stat plot and go into plot 1, you can hit dots or you can hit plus signs for each of your data points. I like the circles because I think they're easier to see. And we can see that this graph, it does go up, meaning as people get taller, they seem to get heavier, or way more in this case. So let's pause right here and make sure that everybody sees how to use the stat plot function and the zoom stat function to plot a scatter plot from list 1 and list 2. So now that we know how to put stuff into list 1 and list 2, and we know how to plot that in a scatter plot, now let's look at how to write the least squares regression line, how to find it in our calculator, and how to put it into our function. So let's go ahead and push second quit to go to our home menu. And to do that, we're going to go to stat again. This is where we put in our list. But instead of hitting edit, we're going to hit scroll over and go to the calculate menu. Now in the calculate menu, the fourth one down is what we call linear regression. This finds the least squares line, or the line of best fit. And so you can see right here it says AX plus B. It looks just like the lines we've been studying, but instead of M, they use A. But it still means slope, they're just using a different letter. And the B, of course, means the y-intercept. So let's go ahead and hit that. And let's go to variables and go over to the y variables and put function and go ahead and hit y1. Now when I push enter here, it's going to give me the equation of the line. It looks like this: AX plus B. The slope was 4.223339,318. The y-intercept is negative 110.9561939. And then we also get, you might get r and r squared. You might not, depending on the settings on your calculator. Now, because we push y1 after the linear regression, if we hit the y equals menu, we can see it put that equation into y1 for us. So we don't have to write it down and put it in manually. And now when I go to the graph, it's going to graph that line with my scatter plot. And there's the line of best fit. Let me back up and do that one more time so you can see how it works. Again, it's stat. Go to calculate, I just hit over. Go down to linear regression. Now to store it into y1, we hit variables, vars. I want to go over to the y variables. I want to store it as a function and hit y1. Then push enter. And we can see the equation right there, and it also stores it into y1. If I hit y1, or I'm sorry, y equals, we can see it into the first equation. And now if I hit graph, it graphs not only the data but the line of the least squares line with it, or the line of best fit. Now that we have this, we can actually use this to calculate or to make predictions for somebody's weight. If you give me their height, I can now predict their weight using this equation. Now remember, this is a prediction line. It's not perfect. These dots do not land on the line perfectly. Some of them are very close, some of them are a little further away, but this gives us an idea of how the height of a person is related to their weight. So let's say I wanted to use this line and I wanted to estimate somebody whose height, I want to estimate their weight, and I know their height is 64. So what we can do is we can hit second, calculate, hit value, and type in 64. If we do that, we can see down here, we typed in 64 for the input. That was their height, their predicted height. I'm sorry, that was their actual height. And their predicted weight for that height is 159.33752. And we can see it right there on our least squares regression line. Now that doesn't mean a person is guaranteed to be that. If they are 64 inches, that doesn't mean they're going to be exactly 159.33752 pounds, but that's a predictor, and they should be somewhere in that ballpark. They might be a little bit more than that, might be under, but that would be our prediction for their weight. And that's how you put data into the calculator, graph it, and find and use the least squares regression line.